Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be heading way down south to 19th century Rio de Janeiro. Yeah, with Aluísio Azevedo's O Cortiço,
Ooh.
or the Slum, as we call it in English.
This book is considered like a classic of Brazilian literature.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what makes it so fascinating?
Yeah, I think one of the most striking things about it is just the setting. Like the Cortiço itself.
Yeah.
It's this incredible melting pot of, you've got Portuguese immigrants, former slaves, mixed race individuals,
Yeah.
all crammed together in this really tight space. And Azevedo doesn't shy away from like all the sights, the sounds, even the smells
Well, yeah.
of this teeming tenement. It's really brought to life.
It makes it sound like it's a character in and of itself,
Yeah.
rather than just the backdrop.
Totally, yeah.
And speaking of characters, of course, we have João Romão,
Right.
the landlord, with a very, shall we say, unique
Yeah.
approach to wealth building.
I mean, he's almost a caricature, right,
Yeah.
of this like cutthroat ambition.
It is.
He's eating like rotten vegetables, slinking in this like tiny hovel, even though his money's piling up.
Right.
So it really makes you wonder, like, what is driving him?
Yeah.
Is it just greed, or is there something deeper there? Like some kind of deep insecurity, maybe?
That's such an interesting question. Because then you have Geronimo,
Right,
who's another Portuguese immigrant,
right.
but seems to take a very different path. He's initially hardworking,
Yeah.
striving for success, but then things kind of shift for him.
It's almost like he gets seduced by Brazil itself.
Oh, yeah.
The music, the food, this more relaxed way of life.
And of course, Rita Baiana.
Right, yeah, and of course Rita Baiana.
Yeah.
Who she's described as this captivating mulatta.
Right.
And, I think it's worth pausing here just to kind of explain that term.
Yes.
Because in 19th century Brazil, that term referred specifically to a woman of mixed African and European descent.
Right.
So she really becomes this almost symbolic figure, I think. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Representing the allure of Brazilian culture, but also those complexities of race and identity that are really at play in this society.
Yeah, and her relationship with Geronimo,
Yeah.
right, who is a white European immigrant,
Right.
adds this whole other layer to that dynamic.
It's fascinating. It's interesting you pointed out earlier the unsanitary conditions of the Cortiço. But then we have this figure of Miranda,
Oh, yeah.
this wealthy Portuguese merchant
Right?
who lives in his very comfortable house overlooking it all.
Right.
Almost like a reminder of,
Totally.
those stark class divisions.
That's a really good point.
Oh.
And it's interesting because Ramon is so desperate to like
Yeah.
break into that upper echelon,
Uh-huh.
right? He dreams of building this grand hotel,
Right.
outshining all the other Cortiços. And it's almost like he's trying to erase his past.
Right.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that really ties into his relationship with Bertolessa,
Yeah.
who's his mistress and his business partner.
Partner. Huh?
She's a former slave, and she's working tirelessly alongside him. But as he starts to climb the social ladder,
Right.
she becomes a liability to him.
Right.
She's a reminder of his humble beginnings,
Mm.
which he desperately wants to distance himself from.
Right.
So you really have to wonder, is his ambition ultimately destructive?
It's a good question.
Is he sacrificing his humanity for the sake of this social climbing?
Right. And is Geronimo's transformation
Yeah.
a genuine assimilation, or is there an element of exploitation or appropriation there?
That's a great question. And we haven't even touched on some of the other characters like Leocadia,
Right.
the Machona,
Paula the Bruxa.
Paula the Brooks. Yeah, exactly. Each one of them kind of adds this other piece to the puzzle of life in the Cortiço. It really is.
It's a microcosm
Yeah,
of Brazilian society at a time of immense change.
totally.
Legacy of slavery, influx of European immigrants, the struggle for identity, all these forces colliding
All within these walls.
in this one teeming tenement.
Yeah, exactly. So as we continue this deep dive,
Yeah.
let's keep those larger themes in mind.
Yes.
Because A Cortiço is about so much more than just the lives of these characters.
Absolutely.
It's really a commentary on Brazil itself.
I agree.
Yeah. One of the things that really stuck with me is how Azevedo just doesn't shy away from some of the darker elements
Yeah, absolutely.
of life in the Cortiço.
Yeah, and I would think a really poignant example of that is the story of Pombinha.
Right, Pombinha.
Yeah.
Yeah, she starts out as this kind of innocent young woman.
Right.
And her mother's so desperate to protect her to find her a good husband, so they can escape the poverty of the Cortiço.
Yes.
Which is where Joan Acosta enters the picture, right?
Right.
This older, supposedly respectable man. But then you have Leone coming in, and things take a very different turn. Can you remind us who Leone is?
So Leone is this wealthy French prostitute who frequents the Cortiço.
And represents this kind of worldliness and sophistication that both attracts and frightens Pombinha.
Right.
She kind of showers Pombinha with gifts, dresses her up.
Almost predatory.
It is very predatory.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really raises those questions about power dynamics and how someone like Leone, coming from outside the Cortiço, can really exploit the vulnerability of someone like Pombinha.
Totally. And Azevedo doesn't flinch from depicting the sexual encounter between them.
Right.
It's not romanticized at all.
Yeah.
It's really shown as this kind of violation, a loss of innocence.
Right.
That has lasting consequences for Pombinha.
Right.
It's just this stark reminder that even within this vibrant community, there are these undercurrents of exploitation and abuse. It's not all samba and capoeira.
Speaking of which, we should probably explain what capoeira is.
You're right. Yeah. What is capoeira?
So capoeira is this Afro-Brazilian martial art
that
combines elements of dance, acrobatics, and music.
Wow. So it's like all three. Yeah. And it plays a very significant role in the story.
Yep.
Especially when it comes to the conflict between Geronimo and Firmo.
Right. Firmo, Rita Baiana's original lover.
Yes.
He's a skilled capoeira fighter.
Yes, he is.
And he's not too happy about Geronimo moving in on his territory.
Not at all. The tension between them is palpable.
I bet, yeah.
Geronimo, having embraced this Brazilianness, sees Rita as the symbol of his transformation.
Yeah.
But Firmo sees it as a betrayal, an insult to his honor.
Right. And that clash becomes more than just personal.
Absolutely.
It's also reflecting those larger cultural tensions at play. The old versus the new, European versus Brazilian.
Exactly. It's like their rivalry becomes this microcosm of the conflict that's brewing within Brazilian society itself.
That's a great point. And then, of course, all of this leads to that big confrontation.
Yes.
The fight between Geronimo and Firmo.
Right, and Azevedo describes it in such visceral detail, you can almost feel the blows landing. It's brutal, no holds barred. And the outcome is, well, let's just say it's not pretty.
Okay.
Firmo meets a tragic end. And Geronimo, consumed by his passion and swept up in the moment, is complicit in his demise.
Yeah, it's a huge turning point in the story.
It is.
Because he crosses a line and there's really no going back.
Right.
He's fully entangled in the web of the Cortiço.
For better or for worse. And speaking of entangled, we can't forget about Jean Ramon and his ambition.
Right.
As Geronimo descends into this world of passion and violence.
Right.
Ramon is busy plotting his social ascent.
Yeah, he's still laser focused on that goal of marrying into Miranda's family.
Yes.
He sees it as his ticket to respectability and wealth. And of course, there's one major obstacle in his path.
Bertoleza, the woman who has worked alongside him, helped him build his fortune. Now she represents his past, something he desperately wants to erase.
And his betrayal is just like, it's heartbreaking.
He's off.
He decides to exploit this legal loophole to claim that she's a runaway slave.
Right.
Essentially condemning her to this life of servitude.
It's so cruel, especially because Bertoleza is completely unaware of his scheme.
Yeah.
She trusts him completely and believes that despite, his coldness, he'll still take care of her.
It really shows how insidious ambition can be.
It does.
How it can just warp even the most basic human decency. And it really speaks volumes, I think, about the legacy of slavery in Brazil.
Yes.
You know how even after abolition, Black individuals were still so vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. The contrast between their fates is just so stark.
It is.
You have Ramon climbing the social ladder, achieving his dream of becoming a baron.
Right.
And then Bertoleza, well, let's just say her story doesn't have a happy ending.
No, it doesn't. And that kind of leads us to the final act of O Cortiço, where everything comes to a head.
So we left off with Bertoleza facing this just awful betrayal, you know, by Jean Ramon. So what happens to her?
Well, she discovers his plan to send her back into slavery.
Oh, my God.
Just imagine that devastation, heartbreak of realizing that the man you've trusted, worked alongside for years, is willing to discard you so ruthlessly.
And knowing Ramon, it's not just like a a moment of weakness or something.
Yeah.
He's like methodically planned this out.
Exactly. It's calculated. It's cold-hearted ambition.
Right.
And for Bertoleza, it's just the final blow.
Yeah.
She sees no way out, no hope for justice or even compassion.
So what does she do?
She chooses to take her own life.
Oh, wow.
Rather than be subjected to the horrors of slavery once more.
Right.
It's a desperate act, but in a way it's also a powerful one.
Right.
You know, she reclaims her agency in that moment, denying Ramon the satisfaction of controlling her fate.
Yeah, that's such a tragic end, though.
It is.
And it's just this stark reminder of the lasting trauma of slavery.
Right.
That even though it's been officially abolished, you know, its shadow hangs over this entire story.
Absolutely, and it's made even more poignant, I think, by the contrast with Ramon's success.
Oh, totally.
You know, because he achieves everything he set out to do.
He does, yeah.
Wealth, status, he even gets the title of Baron.
Right.
Marries into Miranda's family, cementing his place in society.
Yeah, but it's a hollow victory, isn't it?
It is. You know, he's achieved this outward success, but at the cost of his humanity.
Right.
He's lost any sense of compassion or connection.
Yeah.
To the people around him. So it makes you wonder, what's the point of climbing the social ladder if you lose your soul along the way?
Right. And what about Geronimo?
Yeah.
I mean, he's fully embedded in the life of the Cortiço at this point.
Right.
But has he really found happiness?
Yeah.
Or is he just like Ramon, kind of chasing this fleeting illusion?
You know, O Cortiço doesn't really offer easy answers.
Right.
It forces us to confront the complexities of human nature, the contradictions of this society in flux.
Yeah.
You know, it's a story about ambition, but it's also about love and loss and the search for identity in a world that's constantly shifting beneath your feet.
Man, that is such a good way to put it.
Thanks.
And I think that's what makes this book so enduring.
I agree.
You know, it challenges us. It makes us think critically about the forces that are shaping not just 19th century Brazil,
right,
but our own world as well.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that progress often comes at a price.
Yeah.
And that the pursuit of individual success can sometimes blind us to the suffering of others.
Well said. Well, on that note, we want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into O Cortiço.
Wow, thanks for listening, everyone.
You know, it's a book that really stays with you long after you finish reading it.
It does.
And we hope this conversation is giving you some new insights to consider.
Definitely.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Bye, everyone.